The clock ticked past midnight. Silence pressed in on Josh. He was alone. Alone with his homework and his thoughts. He reached out, turning on the old radio on his desk. He hoped for music, any music. Just something to break the silence. Static. That's all he got. Frustrated, he spun the dial, searching for a signal. Crackling noises filled the room. He was about to give up when a voice cut through the static. It was faint at first, a whisper, barely audible. He leaned closer, straining to hear. His heart pounded in his ears. What was that? Was it real? The voice came again, stronger this time, closer, and it was saying something. Something that sent chills down his spine. It was his name. Josh pulled back from the radio, his breath caught in his throat. This was crazy. Radios didn't say your name. It was just static, playing tricks on him. That had to be it. He tried to ignore it, to focus on his textbook, but the voice continued to whisper from the speaker. His name, over and over again. Each whisper sent shivers down his spine. Curiosity warred with fear. He had to know. What was this voice? And how did it know his name? Hesitantly, he reached for the radio again. "Who's there?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The only answer was the static, but then a new sound, a low chuckle that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Josh's hand trembled as he adjusted the dial. The chuckle faded, replaced by the whispering voice. This time it wasn't just his name, it was a phrase, faint but clear. "Find me," it whispered. "Find me and you'll understand." The voice seemed to beckon him, pulling him in. Fear was a living thing now, coiling in his stomach. He had to find out more. He had to know who or what was on the other end of the signal. A quick internet search revealed the source, an old radio station abandoned years ago. The station was miles out of town, nestled deep in the woods. Josh hesitated. It was the middle of the night, and he was scared. But something drew him to that abandoned station, something irresistible. The drive was agonizing. Every rustle of leaves, every creak of the car sounded amplified in the silence. The radio signal grew stronger as he neared the station. The voice continued its haunting whispers, promising answers. He parked a short distance away, fear a knot in his chest. The station loomed before him, a dark silhouette against the moonlit sky. It looked like a giant, watchful beast. The air grew colder as he approached. The wind seemed to moan through the trees, whispering his name. He took a deep breath and stepped into the overgrown yard. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he pressed on, drawn by an unseen force. He found the door hanging open, creaking in the wind. The sound sent chills down his spine. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. The air inside was thick with dust and the smell of decay. Cobwebs clung to every surface, and the only light came from the moon filtering through the grimy windows. It was a graveyard of forgotten dreams. He wandered through the darkened rooms, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He found the main studio, the heart of the station. Dust-covered equipment stood frozen in time. He saw it then, the microphone. It stood alone in the center of the room, strangely clean and untouched by the decay around it. It was as if it was waiting for him. He reached out and touched the cold metal. A jolt, like static electricity, shot up his arm. He gasped and pulled back, his heart pounding. The air crackled with energy. He could feel it buzzing around him. Section 6. The voice on the loop. As he stared at the microphone, he heard it. A faint sound coming from the speakers above. He turned, his eyes widening as he saw the old reel-to-reel tape deck. It was whirring away, a single light flickering on its surface. The voice. It was the same voice from the radio, but now it was clearer, stronger. It was a recording, a broadcast from the past. A man's voice filled with urgency and fear. "They're coming," the voice on the tape boomed, echoing in the silence. "They promise power, but it's a lie. They're not what they seem. Beware." The message cut off abruptly, replaced by static. Then it started again from the beginning. The message was on a loop, playing over and over. Josh listened, transfixed, as the chilling words echoed in the dusty studio. Who was this man? And who were they? Section 7. A promise whispered. The air crackled again. The static from the speakers intensified, resolving into that familiar whisper. The voice from the radio. It was right next to his ear, even though the microphone stood across the room. You understand, don't you? The voice whispered. They're listening. They're always listening. Terror gripped him. He was in over his head. He had to get out of there. He turned to run, but a cold hand clamped down on his shoulder. He spun around, his heart leaping into his throat. But there was no one there. It was like a ghost had touched him. Don't worry, the whisper continued, a chilling caress in his ear. I'll protect you. I promised, didn't I? Section 8. Trapped. Josh stumbled back, his eyes darting around the room. He was trapped, alone with this disembodied voice and the chilling message from the past. Panic surged through him, threatening to overwhelm him. He had to get out, now. He ran to the door, but it wouldn't budge. It was stuck, locked from the outside. He rattled the handle, but it wouldn't move. He was trapped. The voice chuckled, a low, menacing sound that seemed to vibrate in his bones. There's no escape, it whispered. They won't let you leave, not while they're listening. Josh slammed his shoulder against the door, but it wouldn't give. He slid to the floor, his back against the cold wood. His chest tightened, each breath a struggle. He was trapped, alone with his fear. Section 9. One final whisper. The room seemed to spin as the voice echoed in his ears. The tape continued its endless loop, the dead man's warning a constant reminder of his predicament. He squeezed his eyes shut, tears stinging his eyes. Then silence. The tape had stopped. The voice was gone. He opened his eyes, a sliver of hope flickering in his chest. Was it over? Had they left him alone? He held his breath, listening for any sound, but there was nothing. Just an eerie silence that pressed in on him, suffocating him. He slowly got to his feet, his body trembling. He took a step towards the microphone, drawn by an unseen force. As he reached the microphone, a cold breath caressed his ear. He felt something brush against his cheek, something icy and ethereal. He froze, his blood turning to ice. Thank you, the voice whispered, so close it seemed to be coming from inside his own head. They're gone now, but they'll be back, and when they return... The voice trailed off, leaving him with a deafening silence and a bone-chilling certainty that this was far from over.